Welcome to Regulation Revolution podcast family. Thank you for joining us once again. We hope that you've had some enjoyable experiences with our podcasts that are out there. We are several in at this point. Don't know when you're listening, where you're listening, but it's all about regulation. It's all about the nervous system. And today, as always, Amy Reamer, our resident brain geek, is here, and she's going to introduce somebody that's joining us to play along that knows a lot about the brain as well. So this will be dueling neuroscience. Amy, who do we have today?
Oh my goodness. So I am so excited. You've probably heard us say her name before. So we were joking before that people will be able to put a face to the name here. But I have Robyn Gobbel, who is a therapist, author, just brain geek guru also. She has a book that we have in our waiting room at our Lakeside office, and we recommend to all of our parents that we work with when we're working with kids. Big Baffling Behaviors, Raising Children with Big Baffling Behaviors. It's Robyn Gobbel. Yay.
Thank you, Amy and Barry, for having me.
Yay. So, of course, Robyn, I have to share, because I don't even know if I've told Barry, our little, Robyn and I have our own minor trauma bonding, where she came to Richmond back in 2020 for a training that I hosted, and my friend Jennifer was actually at her Richmond Wellness Center, and Jennifer was actually just helping us out with some supervision this summer, but so it was, I guess it was your last live training before COVID, and the lockdown got announced.
Oh, and yeah.
We're like, yeah, I almost ended up on a road trip with Robyn if she hadn't been able to get on her flight back to Michigan.
Yes, it was stressful for sure. The pandemic was announced while we were in the middle of the training.
Mm-hmm.
Yep.
Yeah. And so I would say that was a big shift, obviously, for you, because you had to shift to online trainings, and kind of was sent you sort of probably on this journey towards the book and other things, I would imagine.
Yeah, that's exactly right. I mean, truly on the way to Virginia, it was already obvious something really big was about to happen. And I started already brainstorming, what are we going to do here? Because I was at that point kind of on sabbatical from being a therapist, because we had just moved, and I had probably 18 speaking engagements lined up. And it was very obvious to me something really big was going to happen. And obviously it did. And yes, that kind of marked the beginning of, creating this, online, mostly training experience for parents and professionals. And I actually don't work as a therapist anymore, and I haven't since then. So yeah, pandemic changed everything.
Yeah. Well, all of us are thankful in some ways for that, because it has allowed your knowledge and information to get out there, which is fantastic. I'm listening to your book on audiobook, and I just love it because Robyn actually does the voice for the audiobook, so it's like, I get to listen to Robyn. I was in a consultation group of Robyn's also with other therapists during that time as well. So I would say that I think Robyn and I are kind of fellow brain geeks. I think we think very much alike around this area. And so what I wanted to do was touch on some areas I think are really, a lot of people don't know about. That's what we try to do when we're talking about regulation, these areas that people are like, whoa, I didn't know our bodies did that, or that's weird, I didn't know that. One of the things that Robyn does is she works a lot helping parents, which I think is so fantastic. And she has a program for professionals called Being With, to help them learn how to be with parents and help them when they're struggling with having kids with those big baffling behaviors. So I think, and what I've experienced is there's a lot of pressure put on parents to get it right, to do it right, to say it right. There's so much pressure I see it in like the foster care system. I see it in parents themselves putting so much pressure on themselves. And so there was something that you said, this is one of our misquotes probably, but it was something to the effect of, it's our job to offer safety, but it's their kids' nervous system and other people's nervous systems, obviously, to decide if they accept it. And I think that's a huge aha moment for some people, to recognize that we can't always fix what's going on with someone. So can you just touch on that a little bit, or where what you were thinking of when you were sharing that? And I apologize if I didn't get it quite right. I'll tell you, Robyn,
I'm pretty close.
Yeah, our version, I'm very visual, and we use Deb Dana's ladder a lot. And so we have to hold on to the top of the ladder and offer a hand down, but it's up to them whether they accept it. So that's my little visual of your quote there. But
100%. Yeah, 100%. I mean, I would say that quote, I couldn't tell you what the exact quote was either, but that's the gist of it, right? That like, our job is to take care of ourselves and our own nervous system, and create the opportunity to offer those, cues of safety as much as possible. Like, not all the time, not even probably most of the time, because that's truly not humanly possible. But that, yes, it's our kids or whoever the other person's is. It's then their kind of decision or responsibility to receive those cues of safety, and we're not in charge of that. And I think wanting to be really clear about that comes from a couple places. And one is really relieving parents, professionals, who's ever in that offering position, of this misguided burden that it is their job, or somehow they can control the state of somebody else's nervous system. And I know that there's been so much, well, and the parents I work with, and I'm sure y'all too, like, there's so much relief really in learning about all the ways that we can, help create safety and regulation for our kids. It's been this huge sigh of release, like, oh my gosh, finally somebody is offering us real practical help that really works. But then somewhere along the way, somehow we've turned the idea of felt safety, especially, into meaning safety relationally, kind of almost only. And also that it's somehow the parents are in control of it. So then when we look at kids who still have behaviors that are clearly coming from a place that's lacking some felt safety, there's either this implied or this overt message of, well, it must be the parent's fault, right? Because safety is about the relationship, and the parents are totally in charge of their kids' capacity for safety. And both of those are completely wrong. Like, felt safety is about way more than just the relational experience, way more.
Yeah.
And there's really, there are a lot of ways we can make offerings to somebody else's experience of safety, but when it comes right down, that really is all we're doing is making offerings. And then the complexities behind that person's ability to receive those cues and receive them enough that it shifts their state into safety, totally out of my control. And I know all of us are always looking for ways to kind of help relieve parents of this burden of it's all your fault and it's all your responsibility, because it's just not true.
Rob, one of the things that when I'm working with parents, and you've worked with them probably more extensively than I have, the biggest hurdle that I face usually comes when I say this next phrase: you were never in control.
Yeah.
You do not have control of and people do not like to hear that. I'm like, you're doing behavior management, you're doing modification, you're doing all this, but you have no control over them. You can only influence them through your relationship. And I stole the quote off your website. I actually print notes every now and then. And I like this. Compassion is the neurobiology of change.
Yeah.
And I was thinking, that's really, if you're looking at your kid through maybe a lens of brokenness, okay, like I can see that you're broken right now, and have compassion instead of frustration. I feel like that's a gateway to that safety.
Absolutely. Absolutely. And you're right that all of us enjoy this illusion that we have control kind of over anything,
Right.
but over our kids. And I think folks who have, like for example, myself, like I have a pretty easy relationship with my kid. And I could convince myself that that's because I have control over him, but that's not true at all. I have control over, I hardly have control over myself. I don't love anyone else. And that is a very hard concept that I think the kids that we all work with, and I think these kids are always kind of at the forefront of helping us be real. And this is one of those things where these kids like really force us to be with the truth that like we're not in control of these kids at all. And we're not supposed to be, really.
No. And I think with kids, what I've found really empowering, and that's really a big goal of our podcast, is just to empower people to understand what regulation is. And get that, like we said, the only place you have really any control or power is about yourself. So, but understanding how this interplay is between us. So whether that's with your child or a spouse or friend or whatever, but with kids, I have found when I've taught them about their brain, and I know you do the same work, is helping people to understand how it works. And they get so excited, like that there is something that they can at least control in the fact that they can understand it, and they might can do some things differently, or they can make some different choices, or they don't feel as broken or messed up or wrong.
100%.
Yeah, it's extremely empowering. Yeah.
The quote that I took from someplace, you'll love that. So I give is I'm accountable to you, not for you.
Yeah.
So I'm accountable to offer my kid, hey, this is a place of safety. Here you are. You're having your feelings. I'm here. I'm available to you. They tell you go away and slam the door in your face. You did your job. Parents, that's it. You whisper through the door. If you change your mind, I'll be in the kitchen. So you're still available. You're still there. You haven't left them. You haven't abandoned them. And so I think that is just one of those big things that I'm trying to get parents to really sort of embrace. It's your job to offer it. I'm accountable to you. Hey, you want to talk about your bad day at school? No. Okay. If you change your mind, I'm over here.
Exactly.
But I feel like in those moments, parents sometimes feel this pressure to dig deeper, right? They feel this pressure. What's going on? What's wrong? You want to talk? No, I don't want to talk about it. I'm a teenager. I'm moody and broody. So in the scope of regulation, one of the things Amy had brought up is that you have animals and we have animals.
Yes.
We've got the owl, the tiger, and the hippo.
Yes.
And yours is, you have animals of your own that you use. And I think, Amy, you had described it more like, Robyn, yours is about the nervous system as a whole, whereas ours are a little bit more about the parts of the brain, maybe. Or am I explaining that right?
It's interesting because I actually had someone ask me about that, and so I had to explain that I didn't even know about polyvagal theory when I wrote Toby the Tiger Tamer. And so I was going more off of like Bruce Perry, Dan Siegel, like flipping the lid, right? That's where the My Tiger Owl. Now we have adapted a little bit to put it into like a polyvagal experience, but I know Robyn's animals are really talking about those 3 nervous system states. Is where hers come from, which are great, which I've used turtle, which she has possum and watchdog, and we both use the owl. And so I actually started, Robyn, I wanted to share with you because I was just excited about it. We've been using fire tiger and ice tiger. So we have the fire
Say that again,
tiger,
fire tiger and ice
tiger and the ice tiger. So we have the fire tigers are sympathetic and the ice tiger. But in therapy, of course, my kids they're always choosing their own, right? Like tigers is what I do, right? But yeah, so if you want to share just a little bit about like yours and where they come from or how you ended up using those, because I think it would be interesting for folks to hear the difference.
Yeah, well, first I'll just say, like, there's never too many metaphors to choose from, right? That like, metaphor is so powerful in so many ways, but in coming into relationship with yourself, which is really what therapy is about. metaphor is so powerful, and metaphor lands with different metaphors land with different people differently. And so I think having a lot of options for different kinds of metaphors, like, a real good friend of mine is Justin Arski, who has her own, kind of animal menagerie too. So I think it is useful to us to kind of, one, allow our own metaphors to emerge. Like, just like you said, our kids are making stuff up all the time. Like, I've got kids using all sorts of different, when I was doing therapy, all sorts of different metaphors. And to have different, the bigger thing really is like kind of understand why we're using it, so that we can keep kind of guiding things down that specific path. But for me, I think, owl, watchdog, possum, again, these are not necessarily mind-blowingly creative metaphors by any means, right? Like, a lot of folks are using owls, obviously, to talk about kind of that like highest, most grown up part of the brain, right? Depending on if you're 3 or if you're 45. And then also the safe and connected part. Lots of folks are using tigers and ideas like watchdogs. A possum is not these are not the most, creative, mind-blowing metaphors, but that's why metaphors are working, right? Because they make sense to so many people. Mm-hmm. So I'm sure in some ways I don't even totally remember, but my best guess is that I had a few clients around a very similar time who were using language like owls and watchdogs. I can remember one in particular who we were doing so much work around this one's watchdog self. It was a very dominant part of themselves. And this one made their own stages. Like, my watchdog and possum both have 4 stages in addition to being, calm or at rest. And my memory, which could be wrong, is I had a moment one day where I was like, oh, these stages of their watchdog really resemble Dr. Perry's alert, alarm, fear, terror on, his state dependent arousal continuum. Mm-hmm. And then, of course, Dr. Perry also has how he, notates us all on the dissociation continuum. So that's probably, if I remember correctly, where kind of that possum idea came from. It's like, well, there's these 2 continuums, and it's not, people ask me all the time, like, well, is the watchdog more like the limbic brain and the possum more like the brainstem? And I was like, no, I really wouldn't think of it that way. I kind of put them together as a pair in the lower parts of the brain. Like, they're, and again, this is all metaphor. They're like a pair that kind of works together in that brainstem limbic regions. And then there are these 2 pathways, right? And depending on neuroception, you're going to go down one pathway or the other. And then similar to you, Amy, like Dr. Porteous's work came probably a little after that, right? Like Dr. Perry's first, and then Dr. Porteous's work in polyvagal theory started, and then it all kind of started to come together. Yeah. So, so there's this owl that's like kind of the highest in charge, but safe and connected. It's not just doing math, right? It's in relationship and cooperative and socially engaged. And then we go, to the watchdog, which has the energy, and then the possum, which has that big decrease in energy. Yeah.
Yeah. And in either whichever metaphors that you use, because there's a ton, right? Like, we've even been mixing in Dana's ladder, right? So
exactly.
We're like, when we're in ventral, all the animals are at the top of the ladder working together and talking together, right? Like, they're, they're all buddies.
Exactly.
So, so it's a great framework. That's really what it is. That's what I like about polyvagal. It's such a great framework. We have a residency program. So my group is now like close to 20 therapists, I think, Barry. And, and so we've started a intentional residency program where people are working towards their license, so that we can kind of pour in this information, so then they can just use it however. So no matter what age group they're working with, because it fits. I mean, they can be doing CBT, and they can still use this stuff, right? Like, so So that's what we're doing, like trying to, that's our little part of our own little revolution world over there. But yes, it's a great framework, and kids get it. They do.
Yeah,
Like
exactly.
they totally get it. And even spouses, like Barry does a lot of couples work. He uses this with spouses and relationships and couples and all that good stuff. I had one other little area that I wanted you to talk about because I thought this was fantastic, and it was really helpful to be with a family. I sent them to your podcast, Robyn's. Is it Big Baffling Behaviors? Big Baffling Behavior Show? Is that it?
It's just Baffling Behavior Show.
A Baffling Behavior Show. Yeah, Baffling Behavior Show. So the episode on silliness as a sympathetic response.
Yeah,
I think this is fascinating that a lot of parents don't get, or even teachers, maybe, like anybody working with kids. So I was hoping I could get you to like touch on that a little bit, because I think our folks might find it interesting to how to recognize that. Because I had a client with selective mutism that I worked with for several years that didn't talk in session with me. And then when he finally did start talking, this was actually the first state that we were in. And that's when I went and listened to it was like, I think I saw it on Facebook or something when you posted. And I was like, oh, I think I know what she's talking about. So I went and listened. So yeah. Tell us about the silliness.
Yes. So let's take one step back from that, in that, the watchdog pathway and the possum pathway, they exist in the nervous system all the time. They're not just about feeling afraid or feeling in danger. And so, there's this part of the watchdog pathway when the watchdog is feeling safe, right? That the watchdog and the the watchdog and the owl it can play together, right? We've got safety and connection and relationship with energy, and that's playfulness, right? And then the owl and the possum can also work together, but we'll stick with the watchdog here if we're talking about silliness. So there's two kinds of silliness, right? Like there's silliness that feels fun and good, and there's silliness that's like, this is uncomfortable. And then it's kind of like extra uncomfortable because it's hard to put your finger on it exactly, right? It's like, this child is trying to be playful and cute and endearing in a way, but it feels yucky. And so I know it's very scientific here. These are very, very scientific words. Yucky.
Scientific, like that, Robyn. Scientifically
exactly.
put.
Yes, exactly. So I think remembering that the watchdog energy can happen when it feels safe and connected, or when it's feeling danger, is really important, because the watchdog who's feeling safe and connected, who kind of hangs out with the owl, that's play. And that's like the kind of silliness that feels good. But also, because the watchdog's playing with the owl, that's also a kind of silliness that's like paying attention to the other person's experience and kind of is noticing if this other person also thinks it's fun or not, and is adjusting based on that. Right. So silliness, it can be, sympathetic activation, a watchdog and the owl coming together, and it's fun and it's mutual, and it's both people are enjoying it. But so many of our parents are so confused by the state of kids that, again, sometimes it feels almost a little maniacal. It can start to feel a little frenetic. It's confusing because often, our kids are smiling or laughing or giggling. But again, it has this feeling of like, oh, I don't like this at all. And that, for me, when a parent is feeling, or when you're on like the other side of that relationship and you're like, I do not like this, that is a good clue that it's possible the other person is really in, protection mode, that they're experiencing a fight or flight response as opposed to a safe and connected experience. And so that excessive silliness that feels yucky is, I think, a little ways down the watchdog pathway in protection mode. And I kind of conceptualize it, if it feels important, as a flight behavior when the body can't actually flee, because there's a way that energy is kind of fleeing the relationship. Right.
Yeah.
And just usually distracting
Robyn,
from
can I
what
ask you
the real
something?
problem is. Yeah.
I'm going to ask you something on the adult level, but I know it'll translate to kids. So I'm going to use myself as an example. Why? Because I'm a fun mental health study. So
we would
say there is a distinct difference. Hey, as I tell everybody, I hear those voices, but the voices tell me to do good things. So
using our powers for good instead of evil. That's what
there you go. So, like in this environment right here, we would be saying, using your terminology, my watchdog is out and my owl is present. We're
laughing.
We got some energy going here, everything else.
Yep.
Stark contrast, I come into a new group of people that I haven't been around, and for whatever reason, it's just too quiet, and I make an inappropriate joke.
Exactly.
And Amy's seen me do both. That would be more
I do that too.
That was like, well, this is kind of like somebody's got to break the ice around here. And so then I do it, and I look, and I'm like, okay, these 3 people think that was funny. These 7 obviously have unfriended me.
Right.
So then I'll go over to the 3 or the 2 or 3 that I'm like, okay, you get me, right? And so now my owl is back in here, and we're doing that. So that's what it would maybe look like for a kid. A kid that comes into a new classroom, first time in first grade, new teacher, new kids, that may be acting silly, and the class clown is really a nervous response, could be, to this new environment, right?
100%.
And so we're fussing at a kid, like, you got to stop acting up in school. You got to stop. Teacher sending home notes. Do they still do that anymore? I think they do it through websites.
Making a portal.
It's like a portal or something.
Yeah.
Right. And they're misbehaving. It's like, no, they're not. So instead of addressing it as your misbehavior, would it be more appropriate to just sit down and say, hey, what's going on in the classroom? Is that upsetting you? Are you nervous? Are you scared? I mean, that would be a reasonable approach to use.
I mean, it could be. I think maybe, and I bet Amy can relate to this too, because maybe my background, I was once a play therapist, that silliness from a kid is a really great time to intervene with some play. Okay. Anytime we can take like a nervous system state that is dysregulated and a little disorganized, and what it's doing is falling out of regulation and rhythm, right? And you can see like the silliness that feels dysregulated. There's not a lot of rhythm to it. It just feels bad. Anytime we can keep the energy relatively the same, like let's keep it high energy. Let's keep the like laughter, but can we organize it? Can we regulate it? And that's where I think play can be such a beautiful way to bring some safety to kids who are in that silliness state. Gotcha. And then once there's even just like a moment of connection, and you can feel it, like you can feel in this kid shifts from, I'm kind of doing anything possible to stay out of relationship with you, to like, oh, now that kid's here with me. Then from there, we can start to quote unquote calm down. And then it might be appropriate to use that owl brain and ask, some questions about, well, what's really going on? How do we, brainstorm this for the future? I mean, that's gonna kind of depend. But what I really want to think about doing is offering cues of safety, like we started this conversation with. I don't know if they're going to take them or not. Right. But I want to see if I can offer cues of safety through playfulness, through connection, through relationships, through rhythm and play. See if I can connect up with that kid. Then we can start to kind of calm. Yeah.
What is your theory? I know I'm putting you on the spot, or your ideas about, because I'm getting mixed messages back from folks on meeting energy with energy. Because I hear this, you can't meet energy with energy, right? But then I hear sometimes you have to meet energy with energy. And so do you have a take on that? Is it based on the type of energy you're getting from them?
Well, understanding this is all theoretical, and then there's real life, and they're not the same thing. What I will usually say is we want to think about matching the energy, but not the dysregulation.
Gotcha.
So that's a little, catchier than saying match the energy, but instead of being in protection mode, be in connection mode. So even if I have a kid who's mad, I often want to consider the possibility of rising to their energetic space without scaring them, right? Like I don't want to add to the fear,
Right.
but I want to experiment with allowing their nervous system to first feel matched.
Okay.
And then once they're met, because I think about it again, like it's not the arousal that's the problem.
Right.
It's the safety or not.
Okay.
So if I can match their arousal, but help their nervous system shift into safety, that's actually much easier than trying to get a really aroused nervous system to calm down. Also, that's not maybe even that effective because they're calmer, but they're still in a state of protection mode.
So would it be like the equivalent of, so kid comes in the door with, hey, guess what? I made the team. And you're responding with, wow, that's great. And match that energy. But kid comes in the door and says, oh my gosh, the dog down the neighborhood almost bit me and chased me all the way down the street. Looking back and saying, oh my gosh, that had to be scary. Come here. I'm glad you're okay. So I met the energy, but I'm not. Okay, I'm trying to give parents examples out there.
For sure. And the example I often give that's in between those two, Barry, is let's say you've just cleaned the kitchen, like just worked so hard at cleaning the kitchen. And then your kid comes in covered in mud, but they're so excited to see you. They've picked flowers for you. So they burst through the door. Oh, look, I got these flowers for you. Matching the energy could sound like, oh my gosh, look, you got those flowers for me. Let's look at them outside together. And then maybe coming back in and saying, okay, now let's figure out how we're going to work together to get this cleaned up. Because usually anyone's instinct, mine included, would be like, no, stop. Right? And so we're kind of matching the energy, but we're the dysregulated ones, right? Yeah.
Robyn, I'm gonna have to copyright that example because I've used it like 7 times and I'm convinced you stole it from me.
You're probably right.
I just used it the other week with that. But it also deflates. I used it in the terms of it also kind of deflates what the kid is bringing to you. I did the same thing. Kid comes in the door and for our parts work that we use over here sometimes, tiger is out, hippo is under, owl is off. So the kid knows the rule is to take off the shoes and close the door when they come in, but their tiger's out and can't remember the rule and they're not even thinking about it. So when they come busting in the door with, you look at them and say, wow, thank you so much for the flowers. This is great, blah, blah, blah. And then you look at them once everything's settled down and say, hey, bud, you were so excited about those flowers. Did you forget the door? Oh, that's right. I forgot the door. And the shoes? Oh, yeah, I forgot the shoes. But not scolding the child for breaking the rule. And that's where I run across a lot of times with parents. I'm like, look at what their intention was and understand in that moment. Not all the parts were functioning. We had one going and it was, I'm so excited to bring in these flowers, this turtle I found, whatever it was.
Yeah, exactly.
Then when the owl is back and the hippos come up out of the water, say, hey, you were so excited. You just forgot to take those shoes off, didn't you?
Yeah.
Oh, I'm sorry. And they do it. Amy, you looks like you want to jump in there with something.
No, my brain, I was so glad that you brought this up because this to me is an area that Robyn, I think, was instrumental in helping me to understand, especially with play therapy, because I tend to be more of a low energy, more of a dorsalish kind of a person. And when my kids would go up, I'm thinking, you have to stay calm. You have to that whole stay regulated and all of that. Yep. And then recognizing that they actually needed me to come up some. They needed me to match them. And so in play therapy, that was extremely helpful. Also, I think with parents, helping them to understand too, and I've seen this a lot, and you probably get this, I would imagine, in the club a lot, Robyn, with parents, where they think that they're being calm, but they're probably actually sort of dissociating.
Right.
they're for sure. Down. And they're like, but I didn't yell. I didn't do this. And I was there. I didn't talk. But they're not recognizing their own dysregulation has sent them. And I've seen this a lot if parents grew up with domestic violence and they have a rowdy boy now, or something like that. a lot of times their own experiences and history are coming in and sort of shutting them down, and they're not recognizing. So we when we talk about the ladder, we're like, you're so far down the ladder, they can't see you. There's that match, right? Like they can't see you. And so coming back to circling back around, somehow we always do this and we never plan it. We come back, to they have to regulate themselves first, and understanding their possum, like understanding what that is and why. And so, and I know that the that about sharing your calm, not your chaos. We're not asking to share your chaos, but your calm might be too calm.
Right.
And, so matching energy, but like you said, not adding fuel to the fire with your own dysregulation.
Well, and that regulated doesn't mean calm, right? That regulated means mindful, present, and balanced, connected. And sure, calm can be a state of that, and it is a lot, but regulated can be fun and playful and exercising, and regulated can even be mad, right? Like it's kind of weird to have your kid do something. Like in my book, the very end of the book, we're like the situation we're talking about is that the kid has been vandalizing something. It'd be really weird for that parent to be calm about that. Like that is something to be mad about. It would be very confusing to the child to be like, oh honey, tell me how you're like stop. What are you like? No. But you can be mad and still, and like the mad like matches the situation, like the intensity that it kind of calls for. And you can be mad without getting so dysregulated. You're not thinking straight, or you're starting to scream or cuss or be out of control or name call. That's dysregulated, but you can be regulated and be mad for sure. And it's tricky. It's really tricky. It's a hard skill to master because most of us didn't have a lot of opportunities to see that modeled when we were growing up. But so it's hard to master, but it's totally possible. Yeah.
Well, that's it. We go back to podcast 1 on this one when Amy and I were talking, the kicking the tire.
That's exactly what I thought of.
Yeah. I always go back to it.
Barry thought he was dysregulated when he'd go outside and kick a tire when he was upset or overwhelmed. And I said, no, you're not. You made a conscious decision to kick something that you were less likely to hurt. Wasn't going to like you're not like you're kicking kittens, which he just laughed.
Always go to kicking kittens.
Still in control.
So don't kick kittens.
Don't kick kittens.
We don't kick kittens. I got
it. That would be dysregulated. But you made a conscious. Your owl was present, and your owl and tiger worked together to do something that was helpful to you, but not harmful to anyone else.
Right. Also, it's rhythmic, proprioception, like all those things are actually regulatory. So, good job.
Yes, but you're right. Like growing up, we didn't necessarily see that, or it was demonized. Like just being angry in general was a bad thing, and all of that. So maybe that's what we're doing here is we're normalizing regulation and helping people understand what actually regulation is, as opposed, like we say, I always tell kids, if we're not trying to get rid of your tiger, you need it. It's so important. We're just trying to help him get what he needs in a way that's helpful for you and helpful for everybody else, and all of that. So
Robyn, I got a question for you. What's going on in the nervous system so I'll give you, for instance, on a particular day, at a particular point in life, I have some kid clients that really I have to slow down my energy. You haven't caught on yet that I'm kind of high energy. But I slow it down a little bit. So I move more into, so tell me more about that. Oh, wow, that is rough, blah, 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 blah. And what I find is when I switch over after seeing these 2 or 3 in a row, my adult client who comes in says, you are so calm and so regulated all the time. And I've realized that I've slowed down my whole nervous system.
Sure.
And then I could turn around, like right after that client, I have another one where I just have to basically beat them up. And so I switch. And so they actually, the one adult client heard me with the next client. And the next They're like, you never do that to me. And I'm like, yeah, well, I've kind of run out of calm by the time I'm finished with you. So
It's funny.
What is that? That's still being regulated, right? It's still
I was gonna say, I think that's like a beautiful example of being regulated, right? Like the ability, like one of the key things of regulation is being able to, you know, modulate and modify things and switch back and forth with ease, right? And to be in attunement with the situation and the person that's in front of you. And I think most of us as therapists are doing this with almost no conscious awareness, right? The way we match the energy that's coming into us. And yeah, people who are a little more, you know, kind of on that possum pathway, a little more dorsally, we tend to be a little down with them a little more. And that's for kid clients and adult clients that we're, I think, pretty intuitively and instinctually shifting to get close to that client's state of their nervous system. And sometimes we get it wrong, for sure. But that really is what regulation is: shifting, being in attunement, shifting again when you got it wrong. Yeah.
Amy,
Kids will tell you when you get it wrong, for sure.
Yeah.
They sure will.
They will let you know. They will let you know.
Certainly will.
And I see this a lot in supervision with newer therapists. We get, when we're talking about polyvagal and on them, they're learning about their own states and things, and how dorsal is so scary for some of them. And like, so when they get the clients that are really low, very, very possumy, their nervous system feels that pull sort of down the ladder. And then, you know, then they're like trying to avoid that, put the brakes on, like all of that. So we talk a lot about, for folks, see, I'm very natural in sort of matching that. So like, that's easy for me. And so, but for other folks, that feels kind of scary. And they're like, so like helping them learn, like you said, how you can match without, like you said, without sharing the dysregulation. Like we always say, again, keeping one hand up the ladder, even though you may have one down at the bottom. So that's a skill, because and again, a lot of it's just like parents. We feel like as therapists, we should be doing something, right? We need to fix this. We need to change this. We need to move them out of it, and not realizing that actually by matching them or meeting them where they're at, coming into some congruence with them is going to help them move at some point, maybe not today though, and recognizing that again, it's not our job. Well, we circled again. It's not our job to change where they're at. We just sort of match a little, offer some safety, offer some connection, and be there on that journey, even if it doesn't shift or change right now in this moment. Sometimes it does, sometimes it doesn't.
Right.
Robyn, I've got a question for you in here. We're closing in on like our last 15 minutes or so, but got a couple of questions for you. So I was reading part of your bio here, this EMDR stuff and trust-based relational intervention and blah, blah, certified this and all of the above. Pretty smart girl. Done a lot, been doing therapy. What made you, or if it's not too personal, what made you switch over and say, okay, I'm not going to necessarily practice as a therapist anymore, but I want to be an educator, right? I want to do, was that just a shift you made, or was it just a more of like a more passionate in this area, or thought you could do more good?
Maybe a little combo of all of the things. I've always definitely really enjoyed that educator role and have been teaching in some capacity, probably my entire adult life in different kinds of ways. And then as a therapist, you know, starting to do a little education of maybe some peers with colleagues, but also parents, because, you know, we know so much that if parents can get the information about what their child's behavior really is, right, like how much that changes things. So I've always really enjoyed that role. And then I think to make this big shift away from being a therapist to doing this other work full time was kind of a combination of some, like what was happening in my family and some family circumstances where kind of stepping away from being a, you know, in the room therapist made a little bit more sense. Some of it was very circumstantial. Like we literally moved across the country right before the pandemic. So I closed my full-time private practice, moved to another state, I had planned to probably start clinical practice again in about maybe 18 months. But then the pandemic hit, and that just changed everything. I mean, the work I was doing, it just didn't make any sense to open a new clinical practice. And then I guess the feedback I was getting with the other work I was doing is just so powerful. And to be able to help families and clinicians in kind of a different way. And to also hear, I hear from a lot of clinicians that they, in a way, sort of feel like that I'm a part of their team as they're working with parents, that they don't have to feel the burden of doing all the parent educating anymore, or all of the, right? They can say, go listen to this podcast, or, go check out these resources. And I think that's really cool. Like, I am loving that feeling of being collaborative, essentially, with strangers, people I don't.
Well, that's one of the
people
things
I don't even know.
Well, that's one of the things when Amy started this podcast, when we put it together and everything else, is that, it's not out here to make money. It's not out here to do anything like that. But it's to get the message out, to share these things, to share so people have these tools and have this understanding. And it does. It feels, I can do therapy in the room and help one person. We can do a podcast like this and perhaps hit thousands. And so, I applaud you for your work you're doing. And now tell me this one. This is my second question. And Amy, I promise I'll probably be quiet. Raising kids with big baffling behaviors, brain, body, sensory strategies that really work. Why do I want to hear this? Why do I want to read this? Plug your book.
Plug my book. I think that what folks are okay, let me go back up a tiny little bit. I really wanted to write a book that didn't waste people's time.
I like it.
There are a lot of great books out there. And what I am teaching people isn't necessarily super groundbreaking, right? And so
so far.
So I really was like, okay, if I'm going to write a book, it's got to be something that isn't wasting people's times, or mine to write it, or all that kind of stuff. So I thought, what would I want to convey in a book that might be different than all these other really excellent books out there that are still, of course, very excellent. And I really wanted to see if I could find a way to write a co-regulation based relationship that the reader could feel as though they were in that co-regulation relationship.
Gotcha.
So because of all the, it's when you study neuroscience, you get to learn a lot of other things too. Like, how does the brain learn things, and how does it retrieve things, and like all these other things. So I kind of was just, people can get information anywhere, and it's good information. So if I'm going to write a book and people are going to waste their time, spend time, not waste their time reading it, what do I want them to walk away with? It's not just more information. I wanted to see if people were writing me emails and telling me my emails were offering them co-regulation, and that my podcast was their co-regulation. So I was like, okay, so if I can do that through my emails and I can do that in a podcast, can I do it in a book so that folks can feel the co-regulation and the compassion that I'm offering to them as parents? And that was my true number one desire in this book. But then I do have a model, right? Like, I have a way I work with parents. And so I was like, well, I think I'd like to put that into a book in some way to make it easier for folks to access. So yeah, I kind of took what is, I think, maybe unique a little bit about the way that I work, and then combined it with that co-regulation experience. That's what I really, really wanted to do.
Okay, I'm sold.
Yeah.
Okay.
Great. I always recommend people do the audiobook, because even though I'm sure you can get it from reading it, but I just love audiobooks now because it's like, even like Bruce Perry and Oprah Winfrey's What Happened to You. It's like sitting in a room with them.
Just with them.
Yeah. And so I feel like if you feel like you're sitting in the room with Robyn and this parent that she's working with, throughout this book. And so, so yes, I do. I think I think you accomplished your goal, Robyn. And,
You.
you know, because it's fantastic. And I love it because I trust anything that Robyn puts out. I can send anybody to her website, her resources, her podcast, the book, because not only does she do it well, I know it's grounded in the neuroscience, right? Like, so because I'm the brain geek and the science person. And so, you know, there are other great books out there, but if I haven't read them, if I don't know the person, like I need to go do that before I'm going to recommend it. With Robyn, I don't have to do that. Like if Robyn's done it, I know that it's coming because she researches. She's not just blowing smoke out there. She's really like giving folks really good information. So I trust it. So for the audio folks, though, because I know we've run the ticker thingy for the YouTube, but for audio folks, you know, any of Robyn's stuff, robyngobbel.com, ROBYNGOBBEL.com. Get her book, listen to it. She's got great free Robyn gives away great free resources on her website. Like we're always sending our parents. I think even one of my therapists might even be in the club right now. I don't want to out her. But she loves it. She recommends everything to her parents. And she's probably one of those that feels like you're kind of a partner with her in helping parents. Because as a play therapist and working with kids, you know, I'm an LMFT. So like I come at this from that family perspective. But a lot of child therapists don't necessarily do that. There's still a very kind of individual sort of view in a lot of ways. And so I love when therapists are open to recognizing the importance of that family relationship, parent relationship, the marriage couples relationship. We talk about how we have little mini treatment teams at Heart and Mind, where we'll have like one therapist will be doing couples work and the other one's working with the kid. And, you know, like, but because we speak a lot of the same language with this foundational piece around the nervous system and neuroscience, everybody's talking in the same language, so to speak. So it works really well to partner with each other in that way. But so thankful for Robyn and all of the different things that have come out of your work and what you put out there, because it really is so needed. And all of us out here are really thankful for that. And we so appreciate your time, because I know it's extremely valuable for everybody's time. So really appreciate you coming on and sharing a little bit with us and sharing with our folks out here. Really
same, Amy. I mean, y'all are doing awesome work. Your book is phenomenal. It's on my list of books when I like, you know, teach kids and parents about their brain books, and you know, the work that your center is doing, and then this podcast. And Barry, it's awesome to meet you, but it's just so nice to be in a team. It really is.
It is. Yeah. Well, you're definitely a de facto member of our team. I don't know what does de facto mean. Is that good? I don't know. Is it a good one? Is that a good thing?
She's been adopted into Heart and Mind.
There we go.
There we go.
Yes. Awesome.
Robyn, thank you again. Hopefully we get to have you back again if you've got time in life. Might another book, we'll bring you on to plug it. Amy, appreciate you arranging all of this for our Regulation Revolution podcast. Folks, remember, you can visit our website, give us criticism, give us praise, give us suggestions, feedback, resources on the Regulation Revolution website. You can hear us on Spotify, see us on YouTube, follow Robyn, just follow everything we're giving you today. It'll do you some good. Amy, any parting words, or are we going to wave bye-bye?
No, I'm great. Thanks so much again, Robyn. It was so great to see you and have
you too.
It was a pleasure.
Thank you. Bye.